Decoding Bias, Analyzing Embedded Racism in Border Apps and its Implications on Privacy and Security. Presentation by Matthew Robert Milne. Made possible by Doodly Software. Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to embark on a critical exploration of the impact of racism in border apps, specifically focusing on its effects on racialized individuals. The topic of embedded racism in border apps, which are applications that allow travelers to submit their personal and travel information electronically before arriving at a border. They're supposed to expedite border clearance, reduce wait times, and enhance security. However, they also pose privacy and security risks, especially for racialized individuals who have historically been subject to disproportionate state surveillance and discrimination. The following presentation examines how racism is manifested and reproduced in border apps, both in the hardware and the software, and the implications and the consequences of such practices for the individuals and groups subjected to them. I decided to explore this topic because I think it's a timely and important issue, given the increasing digitization of border controls and the growing migration flows around the world. As we delve into this intricate and crucial topic, we'll seek to answer two fundamental questions. What is embedded racism? And if it exists in border apps, what can be done to mitigate its impact? To start, we need to understand the definitions of some terms. Racism is a multifaceted term encompassing individual acts and structural societal imbalances. According to the Government of Canada, racialization is the process through which groups are socially constructed based on various characteristics. This process, rooted in history, has found its way into technology. On that note, the historical roots of racism in technology can be traced back to discrimination practices, such as the pass system in Canada and the implementation of unequal security laws in the United States. For example, in the 18th century in New York, a legal code known as the Lantern Laws mandated that Black and mixed race and Indigenous people carry lanterns while walking in the streets after dark, if not in the company of a white person. Similarly, the pass system was a policy implemented by the Canadian government in the late 19th and early 20th centuries to control the movement of Indigenous people. The policy required Indigenous people to present travel documentation authorized by an Indian agent in order to leave and return to their reserves. The pass system aimed to prevent large gatherings, which were seen as a threat to white settlements. In her book, Dark Matters, Simone Brown explains that the historical formation of surveillance is not outside of the historical formation of slavery. The historical concerns can be amplified by the emergence of border apps, which transfer the responsibility and cost of border control from the state to the individual, and which may expose travelers to new forms of digital surveillance, profiling, and sorting. Current issues in border apps are embedded racism, the fact that border apps introduce privacy and security risks. There's a lack of transparency in design and data protection practices, racial bias in facial recognition technologies, and of course, the human cost of digital technologies. Racism evolving from a simple definition to a consideration of social structures and power dynamics necessitates applying what C. Wright Mills called the sociological imagination to understand how border apps are connected with embedded racism. This requires recognizing the interplay between personal troubles faced by racialized minorities and the broader structural issues reflected in border app technologies. Salter perspective shifts the focus from human agents to non-human actants, leading to the assertion that the cell phone, a product of modern slavery diffused through a global network, is a pivotal aspect of embedded racism in the context of border apps. To address the debate on facial recognition failures in border apps as a potential sign of racism, a key solution involves diversifying the datasets used for identification. When we think about it, even an intrusion detection system really relies on the data sets that it's trained on. Even machine learning and AI today is all about the data sets. So incorporating a diverse data set, can be achieved by a range of skin tones as advocated by Treychuk 2022, Fairface, an open access image dataset featuring images from 7 different races and over 1,000 images, serves as a valuable resource for evaluating biases in facial recognition datasets. Furthermore, to gain further insights, dataset bias can be further predicted or, found out from the multiracial mega resolution MR2, which offers detailed representations of East Asian, African, and European faces. Utilizing these diverse datasets is instrumental in enhancing the fairness and performance metrics of facial recognition systems and border apps. It's also fundamental in combating as Simone Brown refers to it, the prototypical whiteness that so many surveillance technologies often tend to rely on. Ensuring the protection of facial biometric data collected by border apps is essential. One way is through Borsigar and Thankey 2014 propose a compressed watermarking technique that embeds iris data inside face images, enhancing database security, and could be an interesting remedy for deepfake attacks that are on the rise. Abasham et al. 2023 propose that you both encrypt and scramble the facial data on the database. The encryption scheme utilized XOR pixel substitution and cellular automaton for scrambling in the research that they conducted. Furthermore, physical security measures such as RFID badge locks and multi-factor authentication through man-traps contribute to safeguarding the facial biometric data from unauthorized access. Regular audits, adherence to transparent policies, and compliance with data protection regulations are vital for ethical and lawful collection, storage, and utilization of facial biometric data. Protecting data that may reveal an individual's race, ethnicity, nationality, language, or religion is crucial due to potential risks, especially for racialized individuals. Stallings 2019 proposed various anonymization techniques that we can use, including data masking, suppression, generalization, and swapping. Data masking conceals sensitive information to safeguard user identities. Suppression removes or obscures specific data. Generalization summarizes data to hinder individual identification, and swapping exchanges attribute values for added protection. NIST 8053 advocates for data pseudonymization, emphasizing utility and privacy. While attribute-based preserving data privacy methods can anonymize race and ethnic origin for border processing, with pseudonymization considered an optimal choice, contingent on the fact that the separate key does not get found so that data can then be re-identified. This privacy representation aligns with Froud et al. 2023's perspective that there's challenges conclusively proving embedded racism in border apps, given the lack of transparency in algorithms, internal design, and security controls. While Froud et al. Argue that embedded racism exists in both hardware and software, this report contends that the difficulty in connecting software to racism is pronounced. However, the assertion gains traction when examining the hardware, particularly the phones powering the apps. In light of modern slavery and exploitation within supply chains, the association between the hardware of border apps and embedded racism becomes objectively undeniable, highlighting the need for a comprehensive approach to address racial concerns in technological systems overall. One way to understand how racism is embedded in border apps is to look at the object itself, the cell phone. Unfortunately, the disturbing reality is that the cell phone is a product of modern slavery, as it relies on the extractions of minerals such as cobalt and coltan that are often mined in exploitative and hazardous condition by children in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. These minerals are essential for the production of batteries, circuits, and other components of digital devices and technologies. So, by using a cell phone, we are indirectly supporting and benefiting from a system of oppression and exploitation that affects racialized people in the global south. Through my research, it's become evident that three fundamental challenges persist in this domain. Firstly, there is a glaring lack of transparency. Without a clear view into the inner workings of these apps, our ability to comprehensively analyze embedded racism is severely limited. Secondly, the discourse around ethical algorithm design can't be had if we don't have access to this information. All we can do as of right now is make normative assertions about what should be, as opposed to positive conclusions about what is. This brings up the third issue, a lack of accountability. Without accountability measures in place, it becomes challenging to address and rectify instances, if there is, of embedded racism. The reality is it actually comes down to us, civil society and academic institution, to uncover instances of embedded racism. The research indicates that border apps are reflective of and contribute to the racialized practices within the framework of smart borders. This perpetuation of racialized logic raises concerns about the continued use of technology for the oppression of marginalized communities. Notably, China exemplifies a stark case where technology is employed for tracking and suppressing racialized minorities, as seen in the targeted oppression of Uyghur Muslims using the Integrated Joint Operations Platform. Amnesty International revealed that extensive data collection, including internet history, social media profiles, financial data, communication records, and travel and work histories, illustrate the invasive nature of such surveillance. Additionally, the surveillance as a service model allows states without a developed surveillance apparatus to commercially acquire phone tracking software. Examples like the Mexican government's use of Pegasus software, as documented by Citizen Lab, underscores the broader concern that border applications and technology often align with state interests. These interests may lack transparency, moral justification in a civil society. It's important to note that Canada has new legislation on the way that may impact how these border apps are governed. The CPPA follows the EU's GDPR and updates Canada's privacy laws to give Canadians more power over their data. The CSA aims to improve Canada's cybersecurity and readiness. These laws may impact how border apps are made and regulated, and how racialized groups are protected and respected. Future studies should explore these impacts. Overall, my recommendations is that we should anonymize sensitive data, implement privacy by design, diversify facial recognition datasets, demand increased transparency and accountability, and educate users on the human cost of digital technology. In closing, this presentation argues that border apps are not neutral or impartial, but rather reflect and reproduce the racial biases and power imbalances in the global border system, posing privacy and security risks for racialized travelers. It also proposes several privacy solutions to combat embedded racism in border apps. However, the limitations of available research due to a lack of transparency call for more critical and comprehensive studies on this topic before any definitive claims can be made. Thank you for watching.